to Work in Progress, the podcast where you write and we read. I'm Echo.
I'm Cyrus, the producer.
I'm Kaya. I've never been here before.
Nice. This is Work in Progress. I said that already, and I already said the slogan. Nice. I'm like brain dead today. Today's episode, I don't know if it has a theme, but we have content warnings, which are... Do we have content warnings? I don't think so. We absolutely do have content warnings for this. Neo-Nazis are mentioned in the description of the second piece. The first piece, there is death, and I'll say magical body horror, and gore. Gore in both pieces, mainly the second one. War and war propaganda commentary in the second one. Don't worry, it'll be in the description, so will the time codes. That's it. Bye-bye. We'll start with segment 1. Cyrus, will you read a public domain piece for us today?
Sure thing. I wasn't able to read the entire piece, but there was certain vibes that I got from it.
Nice.
Sort of dystopian a little bit. So whether it's like metaphorical or like a literal dystopia, I'm not really sure, but I did find this one that kind of fit the vibes, in my opinion, called Dystopian Dignity. It goes, sweeping through what was once a mind, gazing at the ravaged shrine, composing the vitals and thoughts divine. Cut my losses and bleed through time, here I stand along these lines. Chimerical dreams in the hands of Morpheus, acidic tears that corrode the capricious, inscrutable plans that defy the obvious, vanishing ties that remove the analogous, a grudge in perfection, deception insidious. Volatile remarks that hold me in check. If I may be so bold, my tongue is direct. A propensity for temper, yet I am select. Now I take my leave, sabbatical. I reflect what is not right, is left and a wreck. Developing memories of my past. Implausible interjections that speak to the last. Fair remarks that hold tight and hold fast. I bow to you, grief, for I have been outclassed. A terse line, humor that leaves them gassed. Clandestine demons that dwell in my brain, delusion of wonder, they're one and the same. Enclose the clairvoyant, set free the deranged. What I have lost is now mine in shame, for if I give you my word, I'll be back again.
Beautiful. Do we have the author of that piece?
It says, Taylor Smothers.
I sure hope she does.
I was going to say something extremely similar, but that one was better. That was delivered very well. I was going to talk about Morpheus, because I heard Morpheus in there, and I got excited. Wait, is it Morpheus or Morbius? Or Mobius?
No, it's definitely definitely the Greek god of dreams, not the fucking vampire from Marvel.
I wanted to talk about the vampire. I like that movie. It's really bad and funny.
Morpheus shows up and then says, I'm morphin', and morphs all over the place, and
That's
then I
what
have
happens
nightmares.
in Matrix. Yeah.
Can I talk about my favorite scene from that movie?
Sure. Quick non sequitur.
Quick non sequitur. There's a part in the movie that I don't think this is actually true, but my brain, like, I realized, I always tell this story, but I realized last time I told it that this might not be true of what they were doing. But it was, they're in a coffee shop, and Morbius, is it Morbius? Morbius and girl Morbius says, they're talking, and Morbius wants to pretend that he's, like, allergic to silver, so he, like, reaches out and touches a cup of coffee in a ceramic mug, and he goes, like he hisses and backs away like he touched silver, but the cup is ceramic. the prop,
Idiot.
the prop department like didn't communicate, I guess. And I double checked and I was like, is it actually that he was trying to pretend that he was in the sunlight? If that's the case, it was extremely unclear because he's already in the sunlight. Anyway, I like vampires. We are not talking about vampires today. Thank you for letting me do that. Maybe we should,
Yeah, instead of vampires, today we have giant monster ladies and... Sorry, spoilers.
Spoilers. We were gonna spoil it anyway. The first piece is called My Girlfriend is a 1959 hardcover by T.S. Schaefer. And they have to say, I first wrote the My Girlfriend is a 1959 hardcover in February of 2023 and set it at intersection of several things happening in my life. I'd begun reading China Miéville's work, starting with Last Days of New Paris, which this story owes its life to. I hit the exact halfway point in a quest to visit every bookshop in my city, and I was realizing I could no longer stand to stay in my current writing group. It was a good place for some people, but it wasn't a good place for me. 1959 hardcover became a Hail Mary story as that dawned on me, and I did what I thought would be unacceptable in that group. I wrote something openly queer and openly feminist. That's beautiful, and I am so excited to start talking about this piece. Okay, here, I'll read the first piece. Watch me read, guys. Ready? My Girlfriend is a 1959 hardcover by T.S. Schaefer. Roosevelt leaned back in the passenger seat, idly darning her socks as Grace lumbered into the camper van, slamming the door shut and muttering, "Yeah, it's in there." "Explain it to me like I'm an idiot, dear." Roosevelt tugged the thread tight. "I think I became one after talking to that gas station clerk a few miles back." "Well, the bookstore owner's an idiot, I can guarantee you that." She thrust the key into the ignition and tore out of the tiny bookstore's parking lot, rushing down the industrial district roads while Roosevelt rushed to sit up properly and put her seatbelt on. "Okay," Grace began. "First of all, the bookstore owner's a massive creep, and I'm glad it was me in there, not you. Second, he's accidentally made an artifact. That is, a mundane item turned magical by the intense thoughts, feelings, and emotions poured into it over time by a magpie." "What's a magpie?" Roosevelt interrupted, throwing her mending into her bag. "Magic person. Makes artifacts, senses the presence of artifacts, and if they're stupid like us," "Like you," Roosevelt said. "Like us," Grace countered. "I'm not letting you pretend you're less important, babe. If they're stupid like us, they hunt down artifacts and try to keep people safe." "The beautiful, thankless work of keeping people safe," Roosevelt said wistfully, looking out the van window at the potato salad factories and the food bank offices whizzing past them. Grace quirked a smile at that. That phrase belonged to Roosevelt's father, a magpie and freelance artifact hunter who taught them the trade. Later, when someone's ice skates turned into foot-eating machines, he gave them his camper van and told them to go do the work in his stead while he argued with Medicaid. The bookshop owners got a first edition of The Canticle of Leibowitz in a black room that's giving off major artifact vibes. It's probably not. Grace winced, trying to find the right words. "Good?" Roosevelt said flatly. "Yeah, the guy kept on calling me something that might be a slur in some web form or another." Grace had to commend the man's originality. She was fat, loud, and butch, and there was plenty of low-hanging fruit people could lob at her when they absolutely needed to state, "I don't like you or your people." After getting on 2 highways and a bypass, they finally found a fast food parking lot to pull into. Roosevelt squirmed out of her seatbelt and into the back, pulling out a milk crate of a cassette tape for later. Her father's love of music had transformed the camper decades ago, making it run on music rather than gasoline, and forcing the 2 women to get familiar with thrift shops and yard sales before every trip. She tossed 2 cassettes that sounded tolerable into the front seat before wiggling out of the back, meeting Grace as the other woman stepped out the driver's side. The pair ordered lunch and slid into the furthest booth from the cash register, making small talk about the terrible weather and picked over thrift stores that defined the town. So, could we just go in right now and grab it from the back room? There's nothing in your way, right? Roosevelt asked. It's not just a back room. It's got like a velvet rope over the entryway and a camera, and when I leaned over it, this god-awful sound started playing over the PA system. I heard it before in this, museum room in the front. The owner spent 20 minutes explaining it was some recording of a bunch of local nuclear scientists singing Battle Hymn of the Republic for Veterans Day in '56. What if we grabbed it and ran really, really fast? Roosevelt ran ahead, holding the door open for Grace. I think he might shoot us, she whispered, looking around the restaurant. Hardly anyone was inside, but she didn't feel like having the police called on them today. He was carrying, and he had a lot of signs and stickers up about correcting shoplifters. Could we get in through the back way when he's gone home for the night? Have your MCR vinyl record break a hole in the wall and get through that way? Danger Days is a shield, not a battering ram. I used it as a shield from all my bullshit teenage angst, and once it finished soaking that up, it became a literal one. And, I think he lives there? I saw a super dirty kitchenette and a locked door beside it. Gross, Roosevelt said, pulling a long, long hair out of her salad. Oh, and him living there. That's pretty gross too, I guess. Not that we can judge, Grace added hastily. The pair shared a cot in the back of the camper, and kept trying and failing to use a solar-powered Marshall aid Roosevelt had picked up all the way in Arizona. No, Roosevelt said airily, then continued eating. So, how should we get in? What's with the singing scientist security system and all? Grace shrugged. I think we just wait until he's deep asleep, run in, and hope Danger Days covers our asses as we run out. That's not a great plan. The artifact feels like it's on the edge of going critical. Unless we find something else in a hurry, that's our only plan. How close to the edge? Roosevelt asked. Close enough I wish we'd passed over the cursed hockey stick in Tacoma and been here a week sooner. Grace rattled into her burger. Ah, Roosevelt sighed. Maybe. If that stick hadn't broken in one swing, we could have used it here and gotten out way sooner. It was a fantastic battering ram. And now it's a fantastic trash can decoration, Grace said, feeling a little guilty. It was her idea to give the artifact a test swing, the result of which showed that it had so little of its creator inside it that it shattered in one use. We should probably go in tonight, if it's as bad as it sounds. I doubt one day or one visit will make much a difference in our little adventure. She said the last word in a way that made Grace shudder in delight. That night they parked the van on the far side of the tire store next door, out of sight of the bookstore, with its doors unlocked and the engine idling for when they needed to make a quick getaway. Using a monocle once owned by a vampire enthusiast, they turned invisible to any camera or mirror and crept around the back of both stores, the barren, underdeveloped scrub desert yawning out behind them. Grace felt the buzz-cut hairs prickle on the back of her neck, painfully aware that anyone could be looking at them for miles, their flesh and blood eyes undeceived by the monocle's tricks. The two pressed themselves to the back wall of the store, painfully aware of how close yet how far they were from the cursed 1959 hardcover. If they could reach through walls, they would be less than 10 feet from the book and the back room it nestled in. But they couldn't, because they were the one artifact that would let them, and now they had to crawl all across the back of the store to the back door. Then through tangled rows of bookcases, through the alarmed entrance and back, all while holding their breath and hoping that Grace's eyes had lied to her, and the owner was far, far away instead of struggling to sleep mere feet from the blaring, roped-off room. Ready? Grace asked. Yeah, Roosevelt lied. She pulled out a custom-made lock-picking kit, the neon pink flashing in the watery moonlight as she teased the analog lock into opening. There was a moment where the entire world felt balanced on the tip of a needle, straining to hold itself up as Grace slowly turned the knob, each creak of the ancient steel feeling like a tick of a doomsday clock. When the knob was fully turned, both of them held their breaths, terrified of what might happen when the door was eased open. Roosevelt swallowed thickly, looking to Grace, whose eyes twitched as a fat, salty drop of sweat eased its way down her temple. Silently, they agreed to count down, and at the end, Grace thrust the door open. To silence. Roosevelt mouthed, "Oh, thank God," afraid that saying it aloud would trigger some invisible alarm. "Let's go," Grace whispered, so quiet her own ears barely caught it. The two slipped through the door, tensing in the moments before their toes touched the floor, as if their touch would finally wake the building up in a spray of screaming alarms and flashing lights. But no, There was only the shuffle of sneakers on rubber mats and creaking wood floorboards. Grace and Roosevelt moved through the tangled rows like ghosts, willing their bodies to be as light and intangible as possible, cringing at every creak of wood under their feet or whisper of shelving against their shoulders. They couldn't have moved more than 50 feet across the length of the building, and yet it felt like they'd spent a miniature lifetime crawling through the forest of wooden boards and shelves. Okay, Grace leaned down, her lips on top of Roosevelt's ear. I'll watch your back with danger days out, and you jump and get the artifact. Roosevelt nodded her understanding, staring into the roped-off room as Grace got back-to-back with her, the vinyl record held between her meaty, calloused hands as she stared into the bookshop and toward the filthy kitchenette and the locked room. When Roosevelt ducked under the velvet rope and stumbled the 2 steps toward the canticle of Leibowitz, the same hasty recording of yowling nuclear scientists began to ring through the bookstore in seconds. Shit! Grace was right. The owner did live inside the locked corner room. They heard the sudden clamoring of a man springing from some unseen bed, reaching for a gun they heard long before they saw it. Glass shattered and paper streamers fluttered as the bullet tore through the storefront, smashing a ceiling fan to pieces before the man stormed out, screaming slurs that made it clear he hadn't expected 2 white girls to be the one breaking into his store. Run! Roosevelt shouted, clinging to the book like it was a lifeline as she raced toward the back exit. Another shot went off, tearing apart more rare books in its path as the enraged owner began to thunder toward them. Grace tried to run as she held up Danger Days, scream singing the chorus of the first song to zap into her head. Danger Days responded beautifully, becoming a physical shield bigger and wilder than when it had been her mental shield in her teenage bullshit angst days. The record began to float, massive white wings unfurling from its center as black rings of eyes began to peel off the edges of the vinyl record and float around, absorbing the next gunshot as Grace kept scream singing. Get out! Grace tried to ram the words between lyrics, adrenaline shooting through her double time as she caught sight of the bookstore owner, shirtless and frothing mad as the moonlight caught on his pale skin and gleamed on the dark gun barrel, a barrel that was shifting to point directly at her. She screamed and sang even louder, dragging the angelic form of Danger Days in front of her right as another pop tore the air of the bookshop apart. Roosevelt crashed into the doorframe of the exit, stumbling over the threshold and barreling into the dumpster just outside before correcting herself just enough to turn carrying toward the waiting van. Grace followed just behind, a death grip on the black core of Danger Days as she dragged the massive artificial angel through the narrow door. Move! God, just move! The sewing needle jabs of her feet in gravel were punctuated by messy knots of gunshots as they raced for the van, wrenching the door open and diving for the driver's seat just as hot gunshot snot crackled against the slamming door. The passenger side window exploded into a spiderweb as it buckled under the impact, and Grace slammed the gas pedal, tearing through the dark industrial roads. Roosevelt, how'd we do? She said worriedly, scanning the road for other cars and finding none. Roosevelt didn't respond. Rose? Grace looked over her shoulder, her heart dropping out of her chest as she saw Roosevelt kneeling on the van floor, her face ghostly as she clutched her bleeding torso. Rose! Grace braked hard, stopping in the middle of the road to rush into the back, grabbing Rose by the shoulders and forcing the other woman to look her in the eye. What's wrong? What's wrong? Where'd you get... Oh, God, oh, God, oh, God. Rosie, I can fix this. Grace hastily turned on the overhead lights, scrambling to find a useful artifact, babbling useless assurances as, unbeknownst to her, Roosevelt reached for the 1959 hardcover first edition of The Canticle of Leibowitz. The book was soaked in Roosevelt's blood, the India ink smear of a man drowning in the pigment of a living person. I can fix this. I can fix this. I can fix this. Grace kept chanting as she pulled out a pack of Band-Aids that a nurse had unknowingly enchanted decades ago. They could fix anything short of actual death, and Grace had never seen them used. I can fix this, she sobbed as she turned toward Roosevelt, pulling out a bandage. But Roosevelt whimpered and leaned away, pressing herself to the van door and the book to her weeping gunshot wound. Roosevelt, this isn't funny. Grace stepped forward, holding out the bandage, the smell of hospital bleach and recycled air filling the van. Roosevelt let out another death rattle, her bloody fingers wrapping around the door handle, her limp body flopping down as it came open. Grace lunged forward, trying to haul Roosevelt back inside, rapidly flip-flopping between cursing the other woman for such a stupid fucking stunt, this isn't worth it, to begging her to stay alive, to just hold on a few seconds longer as Grace pressed the magical Band-Aid against the sopping wet wound. It didn't stick. It didn't do anything. It couldn't do anything, because Roosevelt was already dead. No. Grace moaned, letting out a sound like a dying animal as she pulled Roosevelt closer, pressing her head against Roosevelt's rapidly cooling body. No, don't leave me, baby. Not for this. Not for anything like this. The book tumbled to the ground, falling out of Roosevelt's shadow and into the harsh LED light spilling out of the van. The India ink smear of a man wasn't there, in a sea of thick red pigment. The title was not there either. Now the India ink smear was shaped like a young woman, and rather than declaring the book The Canticles of Leibowitz, the book declared, I'm okay, Grace. Awesome. I love that. Yes. Wow, I did that so well. I read it in real time just now, and we did it really well. Anyway, I'm gonna start talking about this piece because I really liked it. I really like the dynamic between the characters. It's a short story, but I understand the way the two characters bounce off each other super well. I think it'd be super interesting if Skyfer wanted to expand on that by having them disagree on some points to see how they contrast each other, because we see a lot of them getting along, a lot of them like kind of vibing with each other, but I feel like it'd be interesting to explore how they are different. Not that needs to be done. It has so much potential. Another thing I love about this story is that the world building is pretty great. We're given just enough to understand the plot and the character's mission without going like too in depth about the world surrounding it. There's so much potential to explore if Schaefer was interested in creating more to this universe. It doesn't feel like exposition because everything we learn is completely necessary and realistically told. Like, Roosevelt acts as a audience surrogate to this magical world, kind of like Harry Potter, if that's okay to mention in this time period. But I absolutely loved how music was the conduit of magic and so creative, and I just love that. I do have a thing to say that's negative, but don't we all always have something negative to say? Some of the sentences read a bit long, and that's because there's so many different like actions, verbs described within them. For example, the very first sentence, Roosevelt leaned back in the passenger's seat, idly darning her socks as Grace lumbered into the camper van, slamming the door shut and muttering, "Yeah, it's in there." It has 5 actions in it: leaned, darning, lumbered, slamming, and muttering. And this kind of makes, because it's one sentence, it kind of like loses focus at the beginning. Like, as someone with ADHD, I understand attention span very well and how little I have of it. And when I read this, I like didn't process anything about Roosevelt, what Roosevelt was doing, because I was paying more attention to like the last couple things. Like, okay, Grace is in the car, Grace slams the door, Grace mutters, "Yeah, it's in there." I like fully did not process Roosevelt was doing anything, because it's like too much for one sentence, if that makes sense. I feel like breaking it into 2 or 3 sentences could really help the reader like processing the actions instead of having them brush over it. It's more of a preference. But I think there's like a bit too many powerful verbs in close proximity. Kind of like in that first sentence, it becomes a bit distracting to read because there's so much emphasis. Like, a good verb is great and can do like a lot for character and character expression, and it kind of removes the need of adverbs, which it's usually a good thing. But sometimes they can like slow down the reader just because like they're less common, they're less casual. I have to take a millisecond longer on it, and it kind of slows down the pacing. There really isn't a bad pacing issue. It's just like a thing I noticed. So, but again, I loved it. Very creative, very fun, very inspiring. I want to write something book related now. Like, I want to write about books in my book. That sounds fun. Kai, do you have anything to say?
Oh yeah, I have quite a few things to say.
That sounds threatening.
I didn't. No, it's not a threat. Don't worry. I didn't didn't notice the long sentence problem at first, but now that you're bringing it up, I think you're correct. Because I tend to get lost in all the details of a sentence. So if there are too many adverbs, then it's just distracting and I lose the flow and the point of the sentence as a whole. That's why I cannot read Dickens. But this doesn't have that problem nearly as bad as Dickens does. I don't get a paid by the word vibe from this at all. I also wish that there were more physical descriptions and visuals in this excerpt, especially of the characters themselves. Like, the only thing I know about Grace is that she is fat, loud, and butch, and that she has a buzz cut. That's about it. I don't really know what Roosevelt looks like at all. I wish I had more insight into the layout and the state of the bookshop. Yeah, just more physical descriptions. I really love the magic system.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love the idea of artifacts and their emotional connections to their creators. It reminds me a bit of the stands in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, how they're all, or most of them anyway, are named after bands and songs. And we see that with Danger Days, which is literally a record that's used as a shield. And I think this has so much potential for references as well as character insights, but with more care than the way JoJo does it. Because when you see music references in JoJo, it's just like, oh, hey, I know that band, instead of it being a more deeper insight on the sand and its abilities or the character. I got a huge kick out of the fact that the camper runs on music instead of gasoline. I want a camper that does that, and I can't even drive the camper. I am curious, though, because in Good Omens, if you leave a tape in a car for more than a fortnight, it automatically turns into Best of Queen. I'm wondering...
I think that's
if
Crowley's car specifically. Sorry, I'm a very Good Omens nerd.
Oh, I interpret it as being just a rule for when you leave a tape in a car. But I feel like it would be funny if the reason they have to keep replacing the cassettes is because they keep expiring and turning into Queen.
Queen music
that's just
is the only type of music that will not be a substitute for gasoline.
Yes.
I love that.
Let's see. In the paragraph where Grace has Danger Days out and she's trying to get out of the bookshop before she gets shot, the verb scream saying is repeated, I think, a bit more than it needs to be. The first time they use it, that's great. I think it's a good description. Scream singing, it's...
My cat is making an appearance.
Oh, hi, which cat?
It's Panther. She's loud.
Hi, Panther.
She's meowing at me.
Hi, Pooh.
Is it picking up on the mic?
Yeah, scream singing. I think the first time it's a good description. Because it's not like a good performance. It's an emotional act of desperation, but then the same description gets reused several times, and I think that it gets a little bit redundant. I don't see the way that Grace is singing changing in this paragraph, so it doesn't need to be restated, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't notice that, but that's because I'm stupid. But
no, don't put yourself down.
That was more of a compliment. I feel like I'm stupid in the way that is good. I don't know what that way is, but I don't know. I like to be stupid sometimes.
You're the kind of stupid that lets possible writing mistakes slide.
And mispronounces my friend's name for however long we've known each other, like a year and a half or something.
Yeah. Back to the story, though. I like the cohesion of the title, and then the idea of the hardcover itself gets introduced, and then there's the full-on title drop at the very end.
Title drops are like hard because they're so hard to like make them not cheesy, but that one was good.
I like the way that artifacts are explained. I realize that not everybody likes this in writing when exposition and magic system info are revealed in dialogue, but I really like it. I like when a more knowledgeable character explains what's going on to a newbie character.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
actually used that technique myself, if you remember.
Yes, I do. I think I pronounced your name wrong in the episode.
Oh my god, Echo! There's a small mention of correcting shoplifters, and I think that was just a nice euphemism. And then Roosevelt's quote, "The beautiful, thankless world of keeping people safe," that really spoke to me because I have a bit of a hero complex, and I dedicate a lot of my life to keeping people safe and happy and well, and I don't always get thanked for it, and sometimes I get exhausted through it, but in a way it's also beautiful, and sometimes the thankfulness comes through the act itself.
Beautiful. That was great. I really liked that assessment at the end. I think we could just reiterate this is T.S. Schaefer, and this was My Girlfriend in a night. My Girlfriend is a 1959 hardcover, and you should look out for that name in the future because we're hoping to both get some work from this person again and also hopefully see it published.
But I want to see this turn into like a fast-paced urban fantasy series like Dresden Files or Supernatural. I think that it has that vibe.
For sure. Our next piece is... Oh my god, I have to like look at my notes right now. This is a piece by Tower. In the year... This is a little explanation of what's going on because we are starting Mission 3 is what it's called. We are starting a little bit in the middle. So, in the year 2040, a young U.S. Armed Forces member, Joseph Baker, is the sole survivor of a terrorist bioweapons mishap. He's tested and is accepted to the Valiant Warriors Squadron, a counter-terrorist special force group that answer to a large congregation of the richest and most powerful countries on Earth, the Coalition of Nations for Global Security. He is joined by Captain Nathan, the doctor who treated him and oversaw his rehab, medic Layla Madevi. He also meets Second Lieutenant Fritz Gardner and the team's mechanic pilot, First Lieutenant Veronica Gardner. Their first mission almost ends in disaster when the neo-Nazi scientist Artifex unleashes one of the newest abominations, neo-Nazi super soldier called N-1685 against them. N-1685 almost kills them until Layla snaps and seemingly kills him. The VWS alongside Joseph are able to capture Artifex, but N-1685 have feigned death and escaped. Joseph and his comrades return from their mission and receive medical attention, while a third faction of a mysterious Marxist group, QM, requests aid to rescue one of their operatives. Joseph is in shock to see the kind, gentle Dr. Layla fly into an animalistic rage and struggles to process the sight of her single-handedly incapacitating N-1685. And now, we get to hear Mission 3. Joseph sat there in the shower chair, contemplating how the kind, gentle person he befriended was capable of such carnage. For the time he had known her, Layla didn't even raise her voice, even when upset, let alone get physical. She had disappeared for 2 days with a single peep. As he got dressed and prepared to meet her, the men in biohazard suits grabbed Joseph by the shoulder. They beamed a small red laser to his forehead, his temperature reading 97.2. The biohazard suit man clicked a switch on the thermometer, and it sprouted a small needle. Joseph winced. The needle was pressed into his shoulder. After several seconds, the thermometer popped up, a small camcorder-like screen running a bunch of numbers. A few seconds later, the screen determined Joseph's health was adequate. No unknown pathogens or infections detected. Dopamine production slightly lower than usual. Signs of exhaustion detected. The biohazard man put a small bandage on Joseph's needle injection site and sent him off with a gentle pat on the back. His demeanor lightened as he saw Lael, but he saw the amount of bandages that were placed on her. Her fingertips were covered in thimble-like devices. "Holy shit, are you okay?" asked Joseph as the giant monster woman walked up to greet her close friend. A fake-looking smiling crawled across her lips, her canine teeth seeming more pronounced than usual. "Nothing to worry about, just a minor case of an adrenaline-induced psychotic break," she replied. Lael proceeded to hurry back to her chambers without a single word. Joseph felt a coldness in his chest, seeing his roommate in a closed-off state. Usually she would tell Joseph with great joy and enthusiasm about the state-of-the-art medical technology and techniques that she'd been subjected to and wished to study. Fritz observed Joseph's sadness from afar. Fritz didn't have many friends, let alone acquaintances his own age and gender, and he felt solidarity in Joseph's isolation. Veronica was yelling loudly and boastfully describing her successes on the phone to her mother, all the while yelling at the doctors for sticking her in the arm with medical instruments. The medical staff dared not to take her phone away lest they face another bout of loud bat-like screeching. That night, Joseph had another freakish nightmare. His friends had been torn to pieces by a giant figure in a skull-faced mask, their corpses strewn everywhere except for Nathan. Their leader was nowhere to be found. As the figure turned to Joseph, it began to remove the mask that was stapled to his face. Advertisement. Tendons snapped and flesh ripped before its face was finally revealed, which was nothing more than a black void. Joseph then woke up in a cold sweat. It took him several minutes to calm down and realize he was safe and sound, back in reality. Lael was asleep in her usual spot. She lay motionless in bed, the thimble-like apparatus now removed from her hand. Her blanket had slid off her during the middle of the night. While Joseph was buzzing with questions, he knew she was tired not only from the previous mission, but being publicly humiliated on the ship like she was some sort of rabid animal. He gently placed the sheet over the snoring monster woman and jumped back as she grabbed the sheet subconsciously. The bandage around her hand tore slightly, her gnarled claws out as she pulled the blanket over herself. He quietly changed his clothes before tiptoeing out the door and locking it. He was met with a familiar face in the hallway. Clutching a small bag of books, Fritz was confidentially striding down the barracks hallway until he noticed Joseph. "You can't sleep either?" Fritz inquired from Joseph's wide-eyed gaze. "I just wanted to take a walk," Joseph answered. Feeling lonely with Lael's camaraderie, Joseph spoke once more. "So, where are you headed to?" Fritz sighed as he readjusted his book bag. "One of my possessions was confiscated for the sake of sanitation concerns," he hissed, sarcastically rolling his eyes and pantomiming finger quotes with his talon-like fingers. "For the record, I was 100% in agreement that it needed to be cleaned. However," he continued to rant, walking down the hallway with Joseph, the two walked toward the part of the Harris labeled Coalition Special Sanitation Unit. "They claimed that the cleaning agent I wanted them to use weren't strong enough," Fritz concluded as the two approached a man at a small desk, a tarnished sign reading Decontaminated Items Pickup. The CESSU clerk working the desk presented Fritz with a digital tablet asking for his signature, the CNGS symbol plastered in the background. Fritz grabbed the tablet, quickly signing it with the stylus with a run-down tip. The middle-aged CSSU clerk gave back Fritz a medium-sized sheath. "This better not have any acid damage," he hissed, unsheathing a very large combat knife with a beautifully carved two-headed eagle, a crown hovering above each head, each foot grasping a two-handed sword in its handle. In the nearby window, Veronica's Fluideramus was being hosed down by the same men in biohazard suits, in a large warehouse environment. Next to the ship was a recovered spy drone, in which the decapitated head of an ALA abomination fell out from one of its thrusters. Joseph grimaced in disgust, and Fritz's face twisted into a nonplussed frown. To their horror, one of the CSSU men grabbed the decapitated head by its partially mechanic spinal cord. The elderly man at the desk grinned, hitting a button on his desk to activate the poorly maintained intercom. "Yo, Frankie," he said, causing the CSSU operative to turn toward the window. "I'm glad to see you finally got some head." The warehouse erupted into raucous laughter, the man red in the face, pounding his desk in hysterical snickers. "Isn't that a little messed up?" suggested Joseph at the ghoulish spectacle. The CSSU clerk turned off the speaker. "Listen, kid, you and I both have jobs where we are exposed to the most messed up crap." He readjusted his laptop and desk. "We are essentially glorified cleanup, day in, day out. I have to document which poor bastard working for us got chopped up by a faulty helicopter, or how much cleaner we will need to scrub the intestines out of one of our APCs that got ambushed." The CSSU clerk finished up after putting up a photo of himself with an older woman and 3 people in their mid-20s. "You gotta develop a sense of humor in this kind of work, or your soul will rot." Fritz grabbed Joseph by the arm, leading him out of the pickup. "People nowadays have the most crass taste in humor," he muttered, as he and Joseph disappeared into the main hall. 2 CSSU operatives saw the 2 young men leaving. One said to the other, "If the Krots think that joke was in poor taste, wait till he hears about American health care." The 2 shared a laugh before putting on their protective hoods and washing the smashed remains of an ALA operative off another spy drone. Joseph and Fritz retreated to the small recreation area with a series of plush chairs and a small couch. "That's a pretty knife," Joseph said as Fritz had unsheathed once again. "Thank you. I try my utmost to keep it safe from rust and contamination," Fritz replied, polishing the blade with worried fervor. His gaze went from the blade to Joseph. "It was a gift from my mother." Fritz returned the blade to its sheath. "She gave it to me on my 20th birthday after I passed my advanced military tactics class," he concluded as he returned the sheath into a black leather pouch with the same eagle insignia. "My mom wouldn't dream of giving me something like that," Joseph said, looking out at the glitching monitor in the resting area. "She was nervous whenever I used a rinky-dink pair of scissors to cut open a pack of water," he said jokingly. After letting out a half-hearted chuckle, another moment of silence passed, with Fritz struggling to contribute to the conversation. Joseph and he had barely interacted with each other. It was like trying to start small talk with a coworker that you only saw once in a blue moon in the workplace. Fritz worked up the nerve to ask a question. "Do you know how your parents are doing?" he inquired to a nervous-looking Joseph. "I was told yesterday they were relocated for safety purposes and got them new jobs, but under false pretenses as part of witness protection," Joseph answered. Fritz sucked on his teeth as he hurriedly tried to contribute to the conversation. Suddenly a voice blared on the poorly maintained intercom with a loud screech. Joseph and Fritz held their ears in pain as the screeching halted. "Attention!" the automated voice bellowed. "All active Valiant warrior squadron members must report to the war room immediately." Joseph and Fritz looked at each other and proceeded to dash to their rooms to get dressed in their BDUs. BDUs? I don't know what that says. Dressed in their BDUs. In their BDUs. With everyone prepared, the VWS found their seats with the same mediocre chairs. Nathan bounded in with half a protein bar in his gnarled mouth. He dashed to the podium, putting the half-gnawed-on bar on a napkin he pulled out of his left pocket. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," he announced a bit too loudly. "I was a bit busy helping out Andy out with questioning the artifacts." He turned to Joseph with a softened look on his face. "We tried to get him to talk about the ALA scientists responsible for killing your friends," Nathan explained. Joseph leaned in with excitement at justice being done. "Unfortunately," Nathan said, "he refuses to talk." A bitter frown curled across Joseph's lips as Lael put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "That's rather unfortunate," commented Fritz. "Man, that really blows ass," remarked Veronica. Suddenly, the cracked monitor behind Nathan began to flicker. The biggest one showed Andrew Norman's face in his office. "Very good, everyone is here. I don't have a lot of time to explain," he said in a stoic, flat tone. On the same monitor, another face appeared. Joseph was confused at the stranger's face, whose visage was censored by a black bar. On the black bar, the words, "Meeting participant has asked to have their privacy protected." Andrew turned towards the censored portrait that was distorted by static. "It's very nice to talk to you, Mrs. Q," Andrew stated with a warm smile. The censored woman, Mrs. Q, hesitated as the conversation was broken, as a large chunk of molded ceiling fell behind Lale. Yay, I read it. There are also 2 pictures. I don't know how we would get this. I don't know how we'd get this in a audio podcast, but they're very nice. I believe Tower drew them themselves. It's great.
One of them is a little gory, but yeah, it is good art.
It's great. It looks very cool. Yes, I follow them on Twitter. Kaya, do you want to start with your notes?
Okay, we can start. I think the real strength in this writing is the way characters are introduced and established. I think that having an out-of-character moment is a great way to establish character. Like the line, usually she would tell Joseph with great joy and enthusiasm about the state-of-the-art medical technology and techniques that she'd been subjected to and wished to study. Joseph is pointing out that there's something going on that's weird about Layla right now, but it also gives us insight into what Layla is usually like. And then later, there's a moment where multiple characters are receiving bad news, and Fritz's response is, "That's rather unfortunate." And Veronica's response is, "Man, that really blows ass." And I think that's a great contrasting character voices. There's also some funny moments in here. One of the characters says, "Yo, Frankie, I'm glad to see you finally got some head." That just made me crack up. And there's a good bit of gallows humor with the clerk, where he says, "We're essentially glorified cleanup day in, day out. I have to document which poor bastard working for us got chopped up by a faulty helicopter, or how much cleaner we'll need to scrub the intestines out of one of our APCS that got ambushed." I think it provides context for how dark the job really is and how desensitized the workers are. And it also reminds me of, I've worked retail in the past, and some of my coworkers developed some really dark humor.
Interesting.
And there are a couple of other small touches that provide an interesting perspective on the world. The fact that they have a war room, it shows how commonplace and expected war is. And the fact that when they scan Joseph, one of the things that comes up is his dopamine production. It shows that this society values mental health enough to track neurotransmitters like dopamine.
Yes.
As for things I would fix, the hardest part about reading this piece was that there were a lot of typos. There were some parts where numbers were written with numbers rather than spelled out. These are just small fixes, not really flaws, just a little bit distracting. Could be cleaned up a little. There's the particular sentence, "His demeanor lightened as he saw Layla, but he saw the amount of bandages that were placed on her." I would stick a "then" in there, but "then he saw," because I think that it would feel less abrupt. At some point in the middle of the story, it just says "advertisement" somewhere.
I noticed that. I was like a little confused if that was part of the narrative or that was like a note to insert something.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. If maybe this is supposed to be a script for a TV show or a game. I actually thought that this might have been game fan fiction when I first wrote it, but I don't know enough about video games to know how true that is.
I believe it's its own thing because I didn't actually do a good job at introing this, but they have a Tumblr, a Twitter, and a actual project itself available to look at called the Valiant Warrior Squadron. It's a comic, and
Oh, it's a comic.
yeah.
That makes more sense. Maybe the fact that it said advertisement was just like insert ad here.
Hmm. Oh, I see. Formatting.
Right. Formatting.
That's my fault. I didn't intro it very well, and also I was confused myself. Sorry. I feel bad.
Right. I got a kick out of the fact that Veronica's vehicle was called the Fledermaus because Fledermaus is the German word for bat, and it's also an opera by Johann Strauss II. And in an earlier paragraph, Veronica's screeching is described as bat-like. So I think that was a cool tie-in, like Veronica's animal motif is a bat. I think that was about it for me.
Yeah, those are great observations, and I'm glad that they weren't the same observations as mine because that would have been hard for me to
Yeah, that's
follow
one
up.
thing I did worry about.
No, you're good. I read this and I felt this is something bigger. This needs to be something bigger because knowing that I didn't intro this well at all. I believe this is the middle. This is not the very beginning of this story. This is mission 3. And I could like smell how big this universe is going to be because it starts out with like just being a section of a larger piece. I feel like there's a lot of characters introduced in this chapter, and they have very little to do with the Wait, what the fuck did I read? What? Not read, right? What did I write? I can't read my own handwriting.
That's why I type all of my stuff.
You know what? I did type it, but I was trying to like explain. I was doing a white lie where I explained that it was handwriting and not the fact that I can't read in general. So I'm gonna start from the beginning. This very much feels like the beginning of something bigger, which I know it is. As a snippet that isn't actually the start, I can only judge it on its own. But I really liked it and could see how much potential the Universe Tower is establishing has. I really appreciate the choice to linger on the characters while we are introduced to a single environment. It's a good way to establish the world and the characters within without overwhelming the reader. We get several like characters that are focused on and like one main environment where I can feel like each mission, each chapter per se will have like limited perspective, and all together we'll get a sense of this entire world, and I'm very excited to read more. Even with this being a section of a larger piece, I feel like there's a lot of characters introduced in this, and yeah, I feel like I had a little bit of an opposite problem to Kaya, where I was struggling to know who was who during the scene where they're all together and they're all like saying things. Sorry, that's every scene, but I had trouble recognizing who Veronica was versus everyone else there. I knew Layla, I knew Fritz, and I knew Joseph. And I didn't have a chance to latch on to the other people, which is why I appreciated that it was one place, 3 main characters focused on, And I imagine these characters are established like in a previous section, or maybe or will be established later. In the case that they will be more established later, I think maybe you could rephrase some things, not rephrase, but not write them out per se, but like give their lines to someone else, rephrase it so it fits that character, like just so there's less people that we don't know. Tower could rephrase some things to some of these vocalizations to fit a different character, just to slim down the audience's like span of who people are. Like if you need the phrase to get information across, you can make it fit another character. And I'm not saying remove the character. I'm just saying like set aside some of these characters who don't really have anything to like specifically do in this little section, and kind of introduce the characters slowly, more one at a time, when they're more relevant to the scene. Like Fritz, Layla, and Joseph get the most attention in this chapter, so the audience is mainly focused on them. If you want to introduce more people in this segment, perhaps you can give them roles in the conversation between Fritz and Joseph, maybe, instead of near the end. Another thing that could help this issue I was having, again, it's not an issue for everyone, it was just me, is giving characters with less to do a defining characteristic that can be referenced. Like you said, oh, hi, kitty. Like you said, about Veronica having like bat-like things. That was very good. That's an example of what I'm talking about. Maybe like a visual characteristic that can be referenced like each time, just so we have an idea of like we can imagine what we're looking at. Like for example, Layla being like a giant monster woman, like that's great. Like definitely a defining feature. And if she were to come up again, you can maybe reference her voice coming out awkwardly because it's hard to talk with giant fangs in your mouth, or something else like that. I really liked this piece in general. I like where it's going. I'm interested in seeing more of this world. It feels very unique and interesting, but I was having a little issue, like I felt like it was almost going too fast with how soon these characters were being introduced. And I know that's also a problem I have in my own writing, where I will just try to establish too many people in like the first chapter, and it gets a little overwhelming for the audience because while the author is very familiar with these characters and doesn't know, the readers don't know them yet. They're just names on a page, and it becomes confusing. Sometimes similar names also have a problem, but if you could like latch on to a specific characteristic, or maybe just introducing them at a slower pace, that would be great. That's my 2 cents. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I again really like this piece. The 2 authors here are T.S. Schaefer. Looking forward to hearing more about them. And Tower, who I'm also looking forward to hearing more from them. And Tower is actually available to follow on Twitter at Tower of Doubt, and on Tumblr, towerofdoubt.tumblr.com. And the project itself, the Valiant Warrior Squadron, will be linked in the description of this episode. So, do we have like a little question of the day, maybe? Because I didn't come up with one again.
I think I might be able to pull one out of my sleeve.
Ooh, magic.
What most often prevents you from working on your writing?
Ooh, that's a good one, and very relevant because I haven't actually written that much lately. It's mainly my inability to accept that there is a limit to how much things I can do. I have ADHD, but I also have executive dysfunction where if I'm doing too many things, I kind of just don't do any of them and just be sad because I can't decide what to do first.
I
Um
am the same way.
but yeah, I love everything. I want to do everything. I want to sing. I want to learn to play the keyboard. I want to finish my comics and I want to draw and I want to write and I want to do this podcast and do school and apply for a job, which I have a job now, but I haven't. I'm I have been hired, but I have not done my first day of work yet. But I want to do all these things, and my issue is prioritization and um, and time management. I feel like as a college student, I'm obligated to have time management issues. Lately, it's been a bit of motivation. It's been prioritization. I have my Ricky and Reed story that I've been moving to because I have been a little bored with I've been working on book 2 of the Tribe of the Beyond series and also my Ricky and Reed story, which are both work in progress pieces, and I've been hopping between the two, kind of just trying to pique my own interest, and it's difficult because the scenes that are fun also are not the only scenes in a book. If it's a drama, it has to have dramatic scenes that are less fun to write, but more fun to read. And it's motivation, yeah. How about you?
So, actually, very similar to you. I have some executive dysfunction issues, and I'm also a bit of a Renaissance woman. I have a lot of things I want to do. I don't just do writing. I I also do music,
Yes.
and
I wish I
and
did
I do
music.
photography, and I also am working 5 days a week, so I don't have as much time anyway. And sometimes it's hard for me to just get the task started.
For sure.
There's also, specifically with my fiction, I don't really have a deadline for it. Like, it's just for fun. No one told me to write a book, you know? It's just an idea that I had, which means that I'll get to it when I get to it. Whereas with my blog, I am actively doing it for other people to see. So I try to do that at least once a week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The curse of it's being seen now versus it will be seen in the future.
Exactly. Maybe if
I
you pestered me more often, I would put out more book scenes.
Oh, good idea. I love being a pest. But yeah, I feel very similarly to you. I already said my 2 cents on this. Do you want to plug any of your projects?
I will definitely plug the blog.
Mm-hmm. There'll be a link in the description, but if you could say what the blog is called, that'd be rad.
Yes, it's called Aurelia Under the Radar.
Yes.
And it is about experiences of being a late diagnosed autistic woman. I do media reviews and headcanons. I talk about stuff that's more personal to me. And I talk about more broad experiences that I think everyone who is either autistic themselves or is looking to be a supportive ally ought to know. My latest post was about highly sensitive people Go check that out.
Yes, I need to. I I don't really have anything to plug. I guess if you're on Blue Sky, it's Echo Sean Corby on Blue Sky. Um, I'm trying to migrate from Twitter because there are flames, and I don't want to be on fire.
Sounds like not my bag.
Yeah, yeah. I like Twitter because people can like actually say things. I use my Twitter like Instagram, except people can comment. Or they can comment still, but they can like talk about their piece and stuff. And I like to hear from artists as well as see their work.
Interesting. The
And
other thing that I want to put out there, this is a music thing, not as much a writing thing, but I have a concept album out
yes.
called Spectral Memories. It's on Bandcamp. It is the history of autism as told by my time traveling persona. And I feel like such a gnork whenever I say that out loud.
It sounds awesome. I wish I was a time traveling furry.
Same.
Yeah. But I think we should say goodbye now, right?
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
I was
it was super
nervous at
fun.
first, but it turned out to be fun.
I'm always nervous at the beginning of these because I forget how to like speak. But yeah, it was great having you on. Hope to see you again, maybe as a guest or just see your work again on the show. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.